Skittles. Originally made by the British, Skittles were introduced to North America in the late 1970s. The candy we all know and love today is not what it seems to be, however. It used to be something far, far more unimaginable. 6 men from America were serving as spies and infiltrated a British top-secret archive, but they were caught. Given permission by the law, British scientists were allowed to experiment on these prisoners. They used a new form of torture: starvation. Scientists placed 5 different colored flat spheres, barely the size of an American dime, on a small gray table. The scientists first took the leader from the group of the spies and gave him the option of red, orange, yellow, green, and purple, telling him one of the food pieces would kill him. The American spy ate the yellow piece. After a short moment, he felt fine and asked to go back to his cell. The scientist disagreed and told him to wait a little bit longer. With no choice, the spy remained in that small gray room, doing what he was told to do. Soon, the spy told the scientist that he felt lightheaded, slightly dizzy, and a little bit nauseous. The scientist shot him a grin and wrote down what he said. The spy, holding his head, tried to stand up and said, I can't think well. The scientist's grin grew larger. He continued to jot it down, saying, "Good." The spy fell to his knees and started to scream violently. "What did you do to me? What did you do to me?" he pleaded. "You chose wrong. Simple as that." The scientist closed his book and left the spy in the room. "Wait, where are you going?" The spy struggled. He's pleading as he held his head. "Please, let me see my team again, please." He began to weakly claw at the door, but it was no use. The door was made out of steel and locked from the outside. His vision began to blur and get foggy. Soon he was not able to even speak a simple sentence. The unfortunate spy died from his brain dissolving. A thick black liquid began to fall out of his ears, nose, and his eyes. Scientists had people come clean the room, replace the yellow edible piece of food, and then let in the second one. He told him the same thing that he told the last one. Only one piece of food would let him live. The others would kill him. He hesitated, but his hunger took over and he took the red piece. He felt fine at first, but he took a deep breath. His heart was in pain. He fell on the floor and tried to speak, but nothing came out. The scientist smiled with pleasure and jotted down what he observed. "Do you know what's happening?" The spy vigorously shook his head and tried getting up, failing, and falling in pain was too much for his body to handle. The scientist laughed and answered, "You are suffering from a heart attack. You chose wrong." He slammed his notebook shut and left the spy to suffer. After the scientist recorded his data, he got people to clean up his little mess and he sent in the third one. He informed him of the situation. If he was to choose right, he would live, get a piece of food. If not, he would die. The spy was pleading, "Please just let me go, I have a family." The scientist shook his head. "You were always the most difficult." He pressed a button to a remote that caused the collar around the spy's neck to shock him. "Now, eat." The spy licked his dry lips and ate the green piece. After a few seconds of letting the food digest, he began to gag and seal his mouth shut. He struggled to stand up, but got onto his knees, let a burning liquid rocket out of his system. Vomit pooled around him. A thick liquid continuously exited his system. The scientist chuckled and jotted down more notes in his book. "Sadly, you chose wrong as well." He stared down at the poor spy trying to hold back repeating vomit. "Soon, the acid will melt through your esophagus and then your skin, making it impossible for you to catch a single breath." He closed his notebook and sat there, watching him suffer. The American was crying tears that were acidic and melting scars onto his face. The stomach acid melted through his throat. It was pouring out of 2 exits now. The spy held his stomach in desperate pain, like it would stop it from happening. His skin turned pale and sweaty. He collapsed into a pool of his own vomit and blood and died from suffocation. The mess was ordered cleaned up by a scientist. The missing piece was replaced for the next one. He was young. It looked like he had joined when he was 18, probably early 20s. He was timid and afraid as soon as he came in the room. If you choose right from the 5 pieces of food that lay in front of you, you will live. If not, you die. You understand? The American hesitantly nodded and took the orange-colored piece. After a minute of letting the food take effect, the spy's skin turned dry and red, began to itch and shiver with the cold sweat. He gagged, choking on his own blood. He held his sides as he fell to the floor.
What's happening?
The young man rasped. The scientist quickly wrote down what he was observing with displeasure. I was hoping only for your inner organs to fail. Looks like the food took effect of your skin. As we all know, the skin is the largest organ in the human body. I should have seen it coming. He pushed up his reading glasses and sat down. Your organs are failing. You'll be dead in a minute. The American looked up at the scientist in horror and tried standing. His arms and legs wouldn't let him. He stumbled right back to the ground and held his head. He grunted, trying to breathe in. The scientist's expectation, his lungs had now failed him. Soon, his heart would too. With the young American now dead, the scientist changing a few formulas on his chart, the corpse was cleaned up and fresh food put on the table. The 5th spy was brought in. He was a husky guy, probably built more for combat than spying. The scientist was pleased. He hoped that the spy would choose the last untasted food on the table. I'll make this simple for you, said the scientist from his observation spot. All of your friends have chosen the wrong food tablet placed in front of you. They have chosen red, orange, yellow, and green. All of them have died. But if you choose correctly, you'll live. For a scientist, you sure are an idiot, he informed him. The only other one that didn't call out was purple. I'll eat that one. The scientist clicked his pen and waited for him to eat it, highly interested in what would happen. The spy ate the purple-colored tablet with pride, happy to hear that he was almost the last one to be picked. But soon, he regretted it. He spit onto the floor to see that his saliva was dark red. His lower stomach felt like it was on fire, and he propped himself against the wall. He soon had blood all around him, onto the wall. The scientist smiled with glee and jotted down the effects. This will be highly useful to hospital deaths in your country. You chose wrong. He left the spy to suffer, and concluded how to counteract the food tablet effects. The mess was cleaned up and the last one was sent in. He had a giant scar on his neck, making it seem like he couldn't talk, having his larynx taken out for medical reasons, the scientist assumed. The scientist was unhappy. He liked to hear the victim suffer. But I guess watching somebody die and struggle to say anything can be just as amusing. Your friends, the scientist told him, have all chosen wrong. If you eat any of the food tablets, you will die. But if you figure out how to counter-affect the food tablets, you'll live and not die from starvation. Do you understand? The scientist pointed at the mute spy with his pen. He merely nodded and observed the food tablets in front of him. Within an instant, he ate all of them at once and waited for the scientist to speak more. He was baffled at first, closed his notebook without writing anything down. You chose right. Go back to your cell. The steel-reinforced door opened and waited for the spy to leave, but the spy shook his head and stood up. The scientist arched an eyebrow and observed closely, opened up his notebook and his pen. The spy looked up at the observing scientist and spoke in a gruff tone. I will not be controlled. With that, he hastily went to the closest wall and rammed his head into it as hard as he could, smashing his head into the wall and leaving a giant concave in his skull. The scientist clicked his tongue and shook his head. What a shame. Here I thought you couldn't speak. I had other things to experiment on you. He left the observation room and went back to his study. Years later, the British decided to let this new form of torture poison America. What you know as Skittles today was used as a form of starvation torture in the 70s. So think about that the next time you get a normal bag of Skittles, and make sure to eat the whole bag. Have a lovely day. It was an interesting one. Not bad. Not bad at all. Guys, I hope you like it. Please leave a like and a comment down below. All that stuff. If you have any story suggestions, please let me know. And we will see you all in the next one.